So today I'm going to build my first very simple Dutch bucket. I'm using a 2-gallon bucket from Lowe's, which I have used for other things. I'm going to start by using this spade bit to drill a 1-inch hole right on top of this line here. Okay, so I want to have a hole that's big enough to drain well. There's about 1 inch on the bottom here for the reservoir, and I want a big enough hole so it won't clog and so that it will get air into it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some gaffer's tape. It could be any kind of tape, I think, duct tape and things like this, and I'm going to take this little square of shade cloth and I'm going to tape it to the inside of the bucket. So I don't think this needs to be taped on extremely well because it's going to be pressed into the bucket by the coconut coir that I'm going to fill this with. So I'm just going to put this on like this. Okay, so we'll see if we can see what that looks like. So it's just taped to the bottom there. No big deal. I've seen people doing Dutch buckets with all kinds of media, including hydroton and peat moss, perlite, rocks, sand, and I'm going to do something different. Now I am interested in using the cocoa coir for some things, but it occurred to me that cocoa shells, which are a different plant, might also work for this. These cocoa husks have a flake-like texture and they smell like chocolate, so this might be kind of fun. It might add flavors to the food that are hopefully good. This material comes to you in a very dry and fluffy state, and what I'm actually going to do is to soak it up first, and what I'm using to soak is the hydroponic food that I normally feed to my shoots and other kinds of plants. So this thing is going to be preloaded with nutrition when the plant goes in. Okay, so it's taking quite a bit. I'm just going to top this up, not messing around. When I put it in the Dutch bucket itself, I'm going to drain it, but in the meantime I'm just going to let it soak up to its heart's content. So I basically covered it with water at this point, water and nutrient solution. So I'm going to leave it alone for a while to get thoroughly saturated, and then I'll move it into the actual Dutch bucket. So I'm not sure if this is going to stand up on its own. So I think this stick is going to need a little help here, so I'm just going to drill a hole, and I'm just going to thread a little zip tie through here to snatch onto this. There we go. That will hold that in place well enough. Okay, so here's the fava bean plant that's going in here. It was in my deep water system and it fell over due to its own weight. So it has a very nice group of roots coming out the bottom. This was basically planted in some potting soil with some shade cloth lining this net cup to keep the soil from going out. And I'm just going to do this pretty simple. I'm just going to lay this, set in there with the roots laid out kind of horizontally. And I'm going to take a little piece of string, tie a little loop in it to support the plant. Using quite a bit of this green twine these days. It's very handy for tying up tomatoes. I have used clips in the past. I still have a bunch of those, but I think I'm not going to use them anymore. Okay, so this just goes up on the stick here, gets tied tight on the stick, just square knots, and of course this is adjustable on the stick. When people build these, it's very common to put a seal in there and put some plumbing in there, which may be necessary, I'm not sure, but it certainly is costly. So with this system, I'm just going to experiment with letting the water run out the bottom and drip off the edge of the bucket. If this works well enough in a more automated system, I would just put a gutter down there to catch the drippings, and that would be fine, with the water being fed, through drip irrigation systems on top. Okay, so here's this little thing set up outdoors. This is going to be kind of a test. This is like version 1 of anything, so I can always change my mind, make it more elaborate, whatever the deal is. And I'm just pouring some of this solution on top here. And you can see it dripping out the bottom. This is what I'm looking for, actually. Kind of a controlled drip right off the edge of the bucket. So far, I'm pretty happy with what this is doing. So there you have a nice steady stream coming out the bottom. I don't think this really needs any elaborate plumbing at this point in time, nor would it in the future. I think this is going to work just fine. So I have 4 different varieties of cold tolerant tomatoes growing from seed that are ready to come out of the germination area, but not really ready to go into the full-size Dutch buckets that I'm planning to put them in. So based on what I've been doing with the full-size buckets, I decided that I would go ahead and make some miniature Dutch buckets to move these things into. So there's nothing complicated about this. I simply took a plastic cup and used a drill to drill a somewhat ragged hole in this thing. Once I got the first part of the tip in, it just, broke it out, but that's fine. It'll drain. That's what I wanted to do. So here are the tomato plants in their tiny Dutch buckets. These are in my growing system. This is what I call my nursery section, as opposed to the germination section. So they have good light, some from the window and some from the LED lights above them. So I'm just going to let these grow until I see some good roots coming out around the edges and down the bottom, and then I'll put them in the bigger Dutch bucket system.